I had the footage paused at 2 hours 14 minutes and 37 seconds, when I noticed the animal standing beyond the cedar line. It was not moving, not feeding, and not looking toward the camera. It was simply there, half hidden between two trunks, with a body shape that suggested a deer until I enlarged the frame. The ears were wrong, too narrow. The legs were too straight. More importantly, the animal had no visible eyeshine. I review wildlife camera footage for a living. My job is mostly patience, sorting thousands of clips, identifying species, checking timestamps, flagging damaged cameras, and removing false triggers caused by wind, insects, falling branches, or sunlight. I know what an ordinary deer looks like at 2:14 in the morning. I know what a raccoon looks like when it crosses 6 feet from a lens. I know how infrared reflects from wet leaves. This frame bothered me because nothing about it behaved like an animal. The camera was mounted on private woodland outside Ashford, Pennsylvania, 12 feet above a game trail. The file was labeled A17, October 18, 2024, 2 hours 14 minutes and 37 seconds. The next frame, exactly 3 seconds later, showed an empty trail. I went backward. 21 frames earlier. Nothing. Forward. Nothing. The motion sensor had triggered for less than 4 seconds. If you have ever reviewed trail camera footage yourself, tell me in the comments whether you would have marked this as wildlife or equipment error, because when I checked the next file, I found the same shape standing somewhere. The camera could not possibly have seen it. I started reviewing trail camera footage professionally in 2013, after several years doing wildlife surveys for a conservation contractor. The work sounded more exciting than it was. Most days meant sitting behind 2 monitors with headphones, on watching deer browse, foxes trot past, raccoons investigate bait stations, and squirrels occasionally trigger cameras for no reason at all. There is a rhythm to normal footage. A deer approaches cautiously, pauses, raises its head, and either feeds or leaves. A fox usually moves quickly through the frame. Bears leave obvious evidence. Disturbed vegetation, repeated visits, sometimes several minutes of activity. Even animals that behave strangely still follow physical rules. They have weight. They occupy space. They react to sound. The Ashford project was straightforward. 17 cameras covered approximately 900 acres of mixed hardwood forest. The cameras recorded 12-second clips whenever movement was detected, followed by a 10-second cooldown. Every file carried the same basic information: camera number, date, time, temperature, and battery percentage. AC-17 had been installed beside a narrow drainage trail because deer used it frequently during autumn. I knew the camera well. It was an older Reconyx unit with a slightly scratched lens cover. I had replaced its batteries twice that year. Its clock had been synchronized with the other cameras on September 29. So I did what I always do when something looked impossible. I assumed I was wrong. I checked the lens. Clean. I checked the timestamp. Correct. I checked the temperature. 43 degrees Fahrenheit. Then I searched the wildlife database for every species known in that region. Nothing matched the silhouette. That alone was not alarming. Trail cameras create strange shapes constantly. What bothered me was the second file, recorded 6 minutes later. It showed the same trail from the same angle. There was one difference. A single pale handprint was visible on the cedar trunk, directly behind where the figure had stood. The handprint was what made me reopen the original clip. At first I thought it was resin or a patch of exposed wood. When I enlarged the image, 5 narrow marks became visible across the bark. They were approximately 4 inches long, evenly spaced, and angled downward. That still did not prove anything. A raccoon could climb. A person could have touched the tree. Someone might have walked through the property before the camera was installed. So I checked the installation records. AC-17 had been inspected on October 16 at 11:20 in the morning. The technician's notes listed no unusual marks on the cedar. The next scheduled inspection was October 24. The print appeared between those dates. I then examined every frame captured between October 16 and October 18. There were 183 clips. Deer accounted for 141. Raccoons accounted for 17. Foxes accounted for 9. 8 were weather triggers. The remaining 8 contained partial movement too obscured for identification. None showed a person. At 1 hour, 58 minutes, and 12 seconds on October 18th. However, a deer entered from the left side. It stopped exactly beneath the cedar trunk. Its head lifted suddenly towards something outside the frame. That caught my attention because deer rarely stare at empty darkness for no reason. The clip contained 96 frames. Frames 1 through 41 showed the deer feeding. Frame 42 showed its head raised. Frames 43 through 96 showed the deer staring toward the right side of the camera. I checked that area in the original field photograph. There was nothing there, except another tree approximately 30 feet away. I marked the clip for review. Then I opened the following file. It was recorded at 2 hours 14 minutes and 34 seconds. 3 seconds before the strange figure appeared. The camera had not detected movement in the right side of the frame. Something had already been standing there before the sensor noticed it. I left AC-17 alone for the rest of that afternoon. Instead, I opened footage from another camera. AC-09 was almost half a mile away, positioned beside an old logging road. It had nothing to do with the drainage trail. Different elevation, different vegetation, different direction of travel. At 3 hours 6 minutes and 51 seconds on October 18th, AC-09 recorded a 12-second clip. The first 10 seconds were ordinary. A fox crossed the road. Then, at the far edge of the frame, something passed between 2 trees. I nearly skipped it. The object was visible for only 8 frames. 8. At normal playback speed, it looked like a person walking behind the trees. But when I slowed the footage down, the movement became difficult to classify. The figure appeared to move from left to right. Its upper body remained almost perfectly vertical. Its legs did not seem to alternate. Frame 103 showed one leg forward. Frame 104 showed both legs together. Frame 105 showed the figure approximately 6 feet farther right. There was no intermediate position. That suggested dropped frames. I checked the camera's technical log. No missing frames. No corrupted file. No storage error. The temperature was 41 degrees. The moon was below the horizon. I compared the silhouette with the dimensions of the trees around it. The figure appeared to be approximately 5 feet 8 inches tall. That was not particularly unusual. What was unusual was the location. The figure had passed behind a tree that stood only 11 feet from the camera. At that distance, infrared should have illuminated the entire body. Instead, the silhouette remained almost completely black. I contacted the field technician who maintained AC-09. He told me nobody had entered that section of the property for 3 days. I asked whether he had seen anything unusual there. He paused. Then he asked me which timestamp I was looking at. I told him. He replied that I should check AC-11 next. He would not explain why. AC-11 was positioned near a collapsed hunting blind approximately 0.8 miles east of AC-09. I opened the footage from October 18th. At 3 hours, 19 minutes and 44 seconds, the camera recorded a 12-second clip. There was no animal. There was no person. The footage showed an empty clearing. At first I thought the technician had sent me to the wrong file. Then I noticed the tree. A birch trunk stood at the rear of the clearing. Someone had carved a shallow horizontal mark into its bark. The mark was approximately 14 inches long. I checked older footage from AC-11. The mark was already there. Then I checked AC-09. The same kind of mark appeared on a tree near the logging road. Then, AC-17. The cedar behind the strange figure had 1, 2, 3 cameras. 3 locations. The marks were not identical, but their lengths were within 2 inches of each other. I measured the distances between the cameras using the property survey. AC-11 was positioned near a collapsed hunting blind approximately 0.8 miles east of AC-09. I opened the footage from October 18th. At 3 hours, 19 minutes and 44 seconds, the camera recorded a 12-second clip. There was no animal. There was no person. The footage showed an empty clearing. At first I thought the technician had sent me to the wrong file. Then I noticed the tree. A birch trunk stood at the rear of the clearing. Someone had carved a shallow horizontal mark into its bark. The mark was approximately 14 inches long. I checked older footage from AC-11. The mark was already there. Then I checked AC-09. The same kind of mark appeared on a tree near the logging road. Then, AC-17. The cedar behind the strange figure had 1, 2, 3 cameras. 3 locations. The marks were not identical, but their lengths were within 2 inches of each other. I measured the distances between the cameras using the property survey. I called Marcus, the senior field technician. The next morning, Marcus had worked with wildlife cameras for 19 years. If there was a software problem, he usually recognized it before I finished explaining it. I sent him the 3 clips. He watched them without speaking. Then he asked for the original files. I sent those too. An hour later, he called. His first question was simple. Did you alter the timestamps? I told him no. He said the metadata contained something he had never seen before. Each suspicious clip carried a temperature reading that was exactly 39 degrees Fahrenheit, not approximately 39. Exactly 39. Every ordinary clip around them varied between 38 and 44 degrees. Marcus checked the camera manuals. The temperature sensor reported whole numbers, but the internal calibration stored decimal values. The suspicious files showed 39.0 every time. He then examined the exposure data. The infrared emitter had operated normally, but the suspicious frames showed no corresponding reflected infrared from the figure. That meant the object was not reflecting the camera's light. Marcus said there were only a few technical possibilities. A file could have been corrupted. A sensor could have failed. Or the footage could have been edited. None explained all 3 cameras. I asked him whether someone could have entered the property and staged the clips. He said yes. Then he checked the access logs. No one had entered between October 17th and October 19th. The gate sensor recorded every vehicle. Nothing. I asked about the handprint. Marcus became quiet. He said he had noticed something in the field photographs that I had missed. The handprint on AC-17's cedar was too high. It was 6 feet 7 inches above ground level. A person could reach it. But the corresponding mark on AC-11 was 8 feet 1 inch high. It was 6 feet 7 inches above ground level. A person could reach it. But the corresponding mark on AC-11 was 8 feet 1 inch high. The one at AC-09 was 7 feet 4 inches. Marcus said those measurements bothered him. Because the marks were not random. They were getting higher. I spent the next 2 days searching the archive. The project database went back to 2007, although the current cameras had been installed much later. Older footage had been digitized from memory cards and external hard drives. The files were badly organized. Some were labeled by camera number, some by property owner. Others used dates only. I searched for October 18th. The first relevant file appeared at 3 hours 17 minutes and 9 seconds on October 18th, 2017. It came from an old camera designated Unit 4. The footage showed a narrow trail near the western boundary. A deer crossed. Then it stopped, its head turned toward the camera. Behind it, between 2 trees, stood a dark vertical shape. The image quality was poor, but the proportions looked familiar. I searched 2016. Nothing. 2015. Nothing. 2014. A file. October 18th, 2014. 3 hours 18 minutes and 21 seconds. Same general location. Different camera. Same shape. This time it was closer. Approximately 40 feet from the lens. I measured it against the trees, 5 feet 9 inches. I continued backward 2013, no match 2000, and 12 no match 2011 one file October 18th, 2011, 3/21/08. The silhouette appeared again, but something was different. It was facing the camera. The face was almost completely black. I enhanced the image. There were no recognizable features, only 2 pale horizontal marks where eyes might have been. I kept searching. 2010 nothing. 2009 one clip. October 18th, 2009 3/16/44. This was the oldest match. The camera was positioned in nearly the same part of the forest, although the original trail had since been abandoned. The silhouette stood beside a tree, its left hand rested against the bark. I compared the tree to an old survey photograph. It was the same tree now standing behind AC-17. The database listed the camera installation date as October 19, 2009. That was impossible. The clip existed one day before the camera was supposedly installed. I checked the original paper log. The installation date was written in blue ink, October 19th, but the technician's signature was dated October 17th. By then, I had enough evidence to stop calling it a camera error. I still did not know what I was looking at. The closest thing I had to a working theory came from the recurrence pattern. The figure did not appear randomly. It appeared around the same date within the same 3-hour window and near a specific group of trees. The cameras changed, the trails changed, the forest changed, but the location remained approximately constant. I mapped every confirmed appearance: 2009 western boundary, 2011 western boundary, 2014 eastern logging trail, 2017 drainage trail, 2021 collapsed blind, 2024. All 3 current cameras, the distances between appearances formed a rough spiral around the original tree. That suggested movement, but not ordinary movement. There were no connecting footprints, no transitional footage, no tracks recorded by field teams, nothing showing the figure arriving or leaving. It simply appeared at one location, and, years later, appeared somewhere else. I began considering a different possibility. Maybe the cameras were not recording the figure moving through the forest. Maybe they were recording the same event from different years. That idea sounded absurd, even inside my own head. Still, there was one detail that supported it. Every confirmed appearance occurred when the surrounding temperature was 39 degrees. I checked the original environmental logs. The forest could reach 39 degrees in October without anything unusual happening. But the figure appeared only when the temperature reached that exact reading. I searched the weather station records for October 18, 2009. At 3:16, the temperature was 38.7 degrees. The camera rounded that to 39. That meant the temperature itself was probably meaningless. Then I noticed something else. Every appearance occurred between 3:16 and 3:21. 5 minutes. A narrow window. I checked the 2024 footage again. The figure appeared at 2:14. For the first time, the pattern broke, unless the camera clock was wrong. I opened the synchronization log. It was 4 minutes and 58 seconds slow. I decided to return to the property. Marcus offered to come with me, but I went alone because I wanted to inspect the original tree before anyone disturbed the area. I arrived shortly after sunrise on October 24th. The forest looked ordinary: wet leaves, cold air. A few deer tracks in the mud, nothing that matched what I had seen on the screens. I followed the old survey coordinates to the western boundary. The original tree stood 30 yards beyond the current trail. It was larger than it appeared in the footage. A faded metal tag was still attached to the trunk. Unit 4. I measured the height of the old hand mark, 7 feet 6 inches. That was higher than the mark recorded in 2009. I photographed it, then I noticed a second mark. It was almost invisible beneath moss. I scraped the surface gently. 5 narrow vertical scratches appeared. They were approximately 4 inches long, the same spacing as the handprint from AC-17. I checked the tree's opposite side. Nothing. Then my phone received an automatic notification from the monitoring system. AC-17 had triggered. I had not touched it. The current camera was approximately 1,900 feet away. The notification contained the thumbnail. I opened it. The frame showed the drainage trail. A deer stood in the foreground. Behind it was the cedar, and beside the cedar was the dark figure. I checked the timestamp, 3:18:04. The notification had arrived at 8:42 in the morning. I looked toward the trail. Nothing moved. I opened the live camera connection. The camera showed the same empty scene. Then I noticed the timestamp. Dakanai, 3:18:04. It had not updated. The image was not live. It was the old clip. But the file name was new, created at 8:41. I stared at the screen. The camera had generated a new copy of footage recorded hours earlier, and the copied frame contained something that had not appeared in the original file. The figure was facing the camera. I did not approach the figure. I saved the new file, photographed the screen, and left the property before noon. Marcus met me at the office. We compared the original clip with the newly generated copy. They were identical for 117 frames. Then they diverged. In the new version, frame 118 showed the figure's head turned slightly toward the camera. Frame 119 showed the face more clearly. There were still no eyes, no mouth, no recognizable features. But the outline of the head looked almost human. The final frame showed the cedar trunk. The figure was gone. In its place were 5 pale marks on the bark. We checked the camera's internal memory. There was no record of the new file being generated, no write event, no trigger event, no battery fluctuation, nothing. Marcus asked me whether I wanted to shut down the camera. I did. We removed the batteries and memory card. The card contained the suspicious files. The batteries were still at 71%. Before leaving, I opened the oldest archive one final time. October 18th, 2009, 3:16:44. The original figure stood beside the tree. I had seen that image dozens of times. But this time I noticed something behind it. Far in the background, nearly invisible between the trees, was another trail camera. It was pointed directly toward the figure. That camera was not listed in any inventory. I searched the property records. No second camera had ever been registered there. I checked the image dimensions. The distant camera appeared to be the same model as AC-17. That model was not released until 2012. I have stopped reviewing the Ashford archive. The cameras are gone. The property owner refuses to discuss the footage, but the files remain on my drive. And one detail still bothers me. The newest file is dated October 18th, 2024. Its timestamp reads 3:18:04. The metadata says it was created tomorrow.